Hi everybody, it's Sid from Cool Moviegram, your source for everything about cool film. Now be sure to hit the subscribe button if you're new here. Check out my other videos, like my content, and comment and all the usual stuff. And also those of you who've already done that, thank you very much and welcome back to the channel. And yes, the carnage continues with FU-BRUARY, of course. Now we are continuing the top 50 films, top 50 kung fu films, which are my personal favorite ones. And this, in the sixth video, we are going to be covering films 25 to 21. Now we are more or less edging towards, since the last video or so, last couple of videos, even though for me all of them are top tier films, but now we're going into more elite territory. So without further ado, let's just crack on with this. Number 25 is Mad Monkey Kung Fu, a 1979 film directed by Lau Kar-leung, starring Lau Kar-leung, Lo Lee, Kara Hui and Xiao Hu. After being framed for an indecent attack on a woman, an opera star is crippled by a powerful criminal. His sister is held captive and he is resorted to street performances with his pet monkey. The criminal's henchmen bully him and kill his pet monkey. He meets a young pickpocket and eventually learns that he was set up. Both of them train and get ready to exact revenge on the tyrant. Yeah, this was pretty much, again, another kind of like just a great kind of, it was a great display of kung fu from Lau Kar-leung. And you know, it's quite interesting. I mean, I could tell that some of the scenes where he was doing the Chinese opera, probably, I don't know if he was actually dubbed for a lot of the flips or not, but you know, they were done pretty well from the start. There was a lot of kind of mention of like you know, just the whole kind of like, just the whole culture of like of Chinese opera, especially in the opening sequence. And you know, I thought the relationship between him and Kara Hui was actually his, I think she was his girlfriend at the time as well. They had a good brother and sister relationship in this movie, which was quite convincing. And Lo Lee, again, he's just, you know, perfect as a bad guy. Whenever he is cast as a villain, he just knows how to bring out that that menace. And Xiao Hu, again, when it comes to like acrobatic ability, I would say him and Yun Bu are definitely the top contenders. They are absolutely amazing. I mean, I know there's that sad bit of like animal cruelty that's involved. What happens to when you see what happens to the pet poor monkey, which is just too savage. I mean, that's probably one thing that I could have done without. But overall, the training sequences are pretty good, especially when he's learning how to kind of use the monkey fingers and whatnot, and have like the monkey hands, and you know, some really kind of like great kind of acrobatic sequences that are in there, and the fight sequence scenes are pretty good, especially when towards the end when you see Xiao Hu and Lau Kar-leung both go to the to more or less a brothel, which is pretty much owned by this criminal, Lo Lee's character. And it just there's a lot of chaos, a lot of great kind of comedy involved. But again, this is when kung fu comedies were at the top. And I would say, yeah, this was probably one of the highlights of one of the best films that Lau Kar-leung had actually starred and directed in together. Number 24, we have Crippled, Avengers, a 1978 film directed by Chang She, starring Chen Kun-tai, Lu Feng, Philip Kwok, Lo Ming, Chang Sheng, and Sun Qin. Now, of course, this film is also known as Return of the Five Deadly Venoms and even Mortal Kombat in some of the Western market. A revered hero goes insane after his wife is murdered and son is left amputated. He teaches his son kung fu and gets him iron hands which extend and shoot daggers. He has actually gone through a lot of change, and he becomes this very kind of just a very arrogant man that bullies and intimidates everyone with his son. And Particularly, it's actually leaving three men that are actually more or less their victims. One is left blind, one is mute and deaf, and the other has been left with no legs. A young swordsman vows to bring them justice. However, he's left insane and with a childlike mind after receiving torture. The motley crew of crippled men travel to the swordsman's teacher, who helps these men develop their own style, more or less built around their own inabilities, just so they could actually then take on this man who's actually ruined their lives. This is like literally, when it comes to like plot and like literally heightened melodrama and just full-on insanity, one of the most craziest kung fu movies I have ever seen. The training sequences, again, there's just the long training sequences really done really well. The fights are pretty bloody, and you get to see Chang Sheng, again, another great acrobat who kind of does really kind of good kind of like acrobatic martial arts. There's great use of weapons and really inventive ways of actually how these guys are able to fight. And especially, I mean, if you have ever seen the English dub, it's that scene where like Sun Chin's character kind of just kicks one of the villains in the abdomen, and he goes, "Oh, your legs, they are iron." It's just, that line always sticks to me. It's probably, when it comes to like dubbed English movies, it's probably my funniest line for just how funny it is. And yeah, I mean, it was great. It's just a great kung fu movie filled with like some interesting kind of choreography, long takes. Again, this is what I used to love about especially those that era of films, is that the martial arts movies and the kung fu was done with long takes and wide shots, so you'd actually see that it's the performers actually performing the full movements without any kind of like cameras moving here, there and everywhere, and like zooming in, zooming out, the way that they are in a lot of Hollywood movies. But definitely, again, this is, it's a staple of like must-see kung fu movies. As you can see, it's getting better and better. 23 is Challenge of the Masters, a 1976 film directed by Lau Kar-leung. Stars Gordon Liu, Chen Kun-tai, Lau Kar-leung and Wang Yu. Wong Fei-hung is a mild-mannered youngster who wants to learn Kung Fu, but his father, Wang Qiying, is reluctant to teach him. He is accepted as a student by Achai, which is Lu Achai, who is actually Wang Qiying, his father's master. He learns Kung Fu from his master, and he uses his skills in order to take on a rival school and a wanted man who is actually hired by them. This was Gordon Liu's first film as a leading man, because he had done previous movies. He had featured in Chang Cheh's movies, like for example, he was in 5 Shaolin Masters for a short bit, and even Marco Polo, he was actually playing one of the villain's characters. But this is the first time he was actually cast as the leading man. Even in Executions from Shaolin, he had a small part in that movie. But this is where pretty much he was able to kind of use his abilities. I mean, there's even like a kind of like a game that the Kung Fu schools also play, almost is reminiscent to Jackie Chan's Dragon Lord. Instead of kind of a rugby ball, it's like they're all kind of finding these rockets, like these little fireworks, the crackers that they have to that go off, and they have to literally go for it, but they have to beat each other up and do what they can to actually collect as many as they want. The one that gets the most ends up winning, like their school wins. And you see this kind of rivalry between the two schools. But then what was really great about this was the student and master relationship between Chen Kun-tai and Gordon Liu. I mean, it's done really well. Not just the training sequence, even the fight choreography was pretty good with Lau Kar-leung, especially when he fights Lau Kar-wing. That his brother playing like a kind of a government agent or a swordsman who's after this wanted man, played by Lau Kar-leung, who's like playing the villain, which is very unlike him. And yeah, it was more than just the martial arts in this film. It was more to do with the kind of ethics and the morals of martial arts, and how they kind of build this character of Wong Fei-hung and what he was pretty much known for being like, especially if you watch like the old Quanta King movies. Very Confucian type character who's like a physician and also a martial arts master, and definitely one of my favorite films of Lo Kar Leung. And it's just the fact that it even showed how much great potential he had as a filmmaker, because this and Executioners of the Shaolin were his two first movies that he had actually directed, and it just showed that this guy had a great flair for, you know, visual artistry, I would say, definitely. And this here was a great kind of example of his storytelling that he was able to kind of develop at the same time as presenting really kind of effective martial arts. Number 22 is Way of the Dragon, a 1972 film directed by Bruce Lee, starring Bruce Lee, Nora Mill, Unicorn Chan, Tony Liu, Chuck Norris, Bob Wall, and Wang Yin-sik. Tong Lung is a martial arts expert who is sent to Rome to help Miss Chen, who's the niece of one of his friends in Hong Kong, and she's actually trying to run a restaurant in Rome, but is being strong-armed by a criminal organization. And each fight he has with the gangsters' men, it just brings on more kind of like deadlier opponents, eventually leading to an epic showdown in the Colosseum. Yeah, this was when Bruce Lee was pretty much riding high off the success of his first two kind of martial arts pictures, which were The Big Boss and Fist of Fury, directed by Lo Wei. Now, he was actually, well, Lo Wei was meant to actually make, I think there were two films that he had actually had in mind for Bruce Lee, which was one was Slaughter in San Francisco, which starred Wong Tao, and even Chuck Norris was the bad guy in that. And the other one, which was Yellow-Faced Tiger, which was ended up being like a Jimmy Wang Yu film. But Bruce Lee said that he just didn't want to work in those kind of films, not something that appealed to him, and he said, you know, I want to direct my own movie, I've got ideas, I want to do something that the world will remember. So he kind of came up with this movie, and I mean, plot-wise, it's very basic, it's very linear, but the fact is that Bruce Lee was able to kind of bring in somewhat of his own kind of personality, being like this fish out of water character who's pretty much fresh off a plane, and he's in like a foreign country, he doesn't really know his way about or the language, and he's you know, he has like this kind of, there is a kind of a humorous kind of element to this movie. This is before Kung Fu comedy was ever a thing, but Bruce Lee was able to kind of like bring it. And where some of it might seem quite basic, dated, and a bit flawed at the moment, but where this film does kind of may have its flaws, but just the level of martial artistry that's actually on display. Bruce Lee's charisma was really good, and each of the fights are great, especially when he's using like the double nunchucks and he's kind of like taking on guys in like the back of a restaurant. That was done really well, and just his kind of control of these weapons is just absolutely kind of like just classic. It needs to be seen to be believed. And of course, his fight scene with you know, when he's fighting against like Chuck Norris in the Colosseum at the end. Wow, I mean, without doubt, some of like the greatest martial arts filmed in a fight ever. One of the greatest fights ever, kind of like filmed between two top tier elite martial artists, and you can kind of see, I mean, especially like some like the slow-mo shots in this were done really well, and like you see how, like, for example, Chuck Norris's kicks, I used to love his especially his kind of like spinning kicks, his like head high kind of like spinning kicks were done really well, great control. And of course, Bruce Lee, when he's kind of using that kind of like Muhammad Ali shuffle, it's just it's way too iconic. I mean, this is one of like, definitely when it comes to like top tier kung fu movies, I mean, Bruce Lee's movies had to be there. I mean, bar from Game of Death, because Game of Death was just a bit like, if it was his film that they done, and if he had completed it, then it would have been different. But of course, this was the last complete Hong Kong movie that he had actually done. But definitely, I mean, it was a pretty good debut. I reckon he you never know, he probably would have gone on to maybe direct more greater films and do a lot more with it, with the martial arts genre as well. Number 21 is Avenging Eagle, a 1978 film directed by Sung Jung. It stars T Lung, Fu Xing, Ku Feng, Wang Lungwei, and Eddie Cole. Black Eagle decides to leave his ruthless gang called the Iron Bolt Clan, which is a gang that's actually built of nothing but ruthless killers, and all more or less raised as orphans by a by the actual leader, and they're actually given these really skilled in like weaponry and martial arts. And he meets another young man, Chuck Yifan, who wants to avenge his wife and family who were murdered by the Iron Bolt Clan. But Yifan's motives seem to be leading towards something more. Yeah, now when it comes to like a serious kind of like martial arts movies, I mean, definitely I would say Shaw Brothers just absolutely kind of dominated, if anything. I mean, they just kind of like had so many films, which is why I've included quite a few of them, and so many I've had to kind of leave out, which, you know, I also think are great top tier films. But Avenging Eagle is one of those that has to be more or less within like the top half of it, because it's just that good. I mean, yeah, T Lung again gives an absolutely amazing performance. I mean, the fight choreography in this is done really well with some really great, inventive, creative weapons. And it's just the mood of this film. It's like a very kind of like tragic, dark, kind of, you know, very kind of like a grim, gritty kind of feel to this martial arts movie. Almost like, it's like almost like a crime thriller that's actually been like a crime drama that's been kind of like set like during ancient, like, you know, period, kind of as a period kung fu movie. But I mean, the plot itself could easily have been kind of like transported into like modern day action movies, but it's done really well. I mean, some great kind of like genre play. I mean, especially like the weaponry that's in this film is just done really well. In particular, when you see Fu Xing's character, Chuck Yifan, who kind of like pulls out these twin hidden blades in his up his sleeves, and he just kind of like just uses them. Just so cool. It's just so cool. And T Lung, of course, he does an absolutely amazing job, not just as like a martial arts performer, but also as a as an actor. I think his performance in this film is just, you know, it was top tier. He just plays a very layered character, and I mean, even the story itself is very layered. I mean, Ku Feng he plays like a really kind of a menacing, kind of evil bad guy, does a really good job. You get to see a very young Eddie Cole in like an early role of his. And of course, Wang Lungwei, who's one of like the greatest bad guys ever, and he again is on point. It's one of those movies where there's hardly any flaws to it. Now, I have heard that the Arrow kind of like restoration of this film on the Short Scott Volume 3 Blu-ray, which I still haven't got, unfortunately. I need to get that set. Is absolutely really well done, and it's actually, they've restored it really well, and the film just looks amazing. And but definitely, again, this is a film that does deserve to be seen. You know, it is that good. Right, well, yeah, that was my my picks for films 25 to 21. Again, you can always leave a comment and let me know what you think of these films, and of course they are getting better and better, I would say, definitely. And I'll definitely see you on the next one.